What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr War Games, and today I am bringing you an update finally to Predaplant Branded. Now the reason it is Predaplant Branded and not Branded Predaplant is that Predaplant is the core focus of the deck. It is all about the Predaplants with the Branded supporting it rather than the other way around. And let me tell you this, I have huge amounts of fun with this deck. It is still very, very powerful, and it can be highlighted a lot on Master Duel, but this is obviously going to be TCG legal. So, with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. So, as it is a Predaplant build, we'll start off with the Predaplant cards. So I'm rocking triple Office Scorpio. So this is your main normal summon for the deck. It is very, very susceptible. It is very, very weak. And what I mean by that is this is your perfect target. You get ashed, you get impermed, you cry deep down inside. Because it discards as cost as well, there's very few cards that will actually still benefit from this, mainly in the Predaplant backlist and of course in the form of Edgimp Chains. That being said, the idea is to hold back your Scorpio as much as possible. Although I said it is your main normal summon of the deck, we are playing cards that allow you to not use it as your normal summon, and there are ways of special summoning it from the deck, from the hand, and everything else alike. Two of the backlist, so this is what makes this kind of combination of a deck work so well, alongside the one Stay Sailor. Now these two cards is what kind of instigates the whole branded packaging working to its max potential, and they are the reasons why. So, backlist is if it is just sent to the graveyard in general. So, Foolish Burial, Branded Fusion, discarded off of Lubellion. They will then trigger to add a Predaplant monster from your deck to your hand. So if you open up Branded Fusion, that's a very good way of activating Branded Fusion. You find out if your opponent's got an Ash or not. That will then allow you to then continue to play. Now, obviously, if they Ash the Branded Fusion, you then know you can normal summon the Scorpio, and you're going to be wanting to bait out like an Imperm or something like that. And if you don't, you're able to continue to make your plays going forward. It does have a secondary effect that can revive itself from the graveyard to the board if there is a monster with a Predap counter on it, but it's rare that that's actually going to occur as consistent as you want it, because you'll ideally be like, right, okay, I'm going to protect my board, I'm going to block my board up, I'm going to control my opponent's board, and then I'm going to OTK the next turn. The reason that Stay Sailor is so good is, again, because it's a light target for Albion, so you can use it off of Branded Fusion without needing to use a discard fodder. It has the ability that if it is again sent to the graveyard by a card effect, so if it's discarded as cost, it won't trigger, but if it's just sent by card effect, so that's very, very easily done in the form of stuff like Branded Fusion and everything else like that. So as long as it's not cost, you are good to rock and roll. And what makes it so good is it then allows you to Foolish a level 5 or lower plant from your deck or extra deck to the graveyard. So that is going to allow you to Foolish the backlist. And by doing so, what you're doing is you're setting up darks and lights in your graveyard and getting an additional search. So you've got two ways. So if you want to get to a Predaplant without needing to use a discard, because maybe you need your discard for Scorpio, you go down the Stay Sailor route. If you don't mind and you've opened this up, you can go down the other route and then use that as a discard. So you got a lot of different options, which what makes this deck really cool. I've then got two of the Buffos. I really like this card, which is why I bumped it up to 2. So in the scale, it is basically just a poly, and because it can be searched for everything else you need to, that's what makes it so good. I am using its counterpart, Triantis. This one allows you to use your scales as fusion material when you perform a fusion summon, and it's great because it's obviously a dark, so it allows you to pretty much utilize more of the Despias. And then I believe it's this one that if it is used, so when it's in a Pendulum Zone, you can fusion summon a Dark Fusion monster. You can also use cards in your Pendulum Zone as monsters on the field as materials for the Fusion Zone. But then if this card is sent to the graveyard or added to your extra deck face up because it was used as fusion material, you get to choose monsters on the field up to the number of monsters you control and place a Predap counter on each one. If you do, any of those monsters that are level 2 or higher become level 1. So that's actually pretty useful, because then that's how you can spam the board with the Predap counters. And then it's the Buffo that if it is used or sent to the graveyard or added to your extra deck face up, because it was used as fusion material, you get to add a face up Dark Pendulum from your extra deck to the hand. So the idea is that if you've got both of these in the scale, not only can you then flood your board by putting Predap counters on your board, or the board in general, but you then also get to add this back to the hand, so you're basically just looping back a bit of free resource. Keep in mind as well, you choose any monsters on the field, so you can even give your cards Predap counters. Now that's important if you play the big Starving Venom, because the Starving Venom requires you to tribute a monster with a Predap counter on either board. But obviously that's not our core route of play, and I'm actually sadly not able to play the Starving Venom, or I chose not to. But if you wanted to, you can very easily add it in. I think it's like Greedy Starving Venom, something like that. We've then got the 1 Camilla Sundew. I actually consider it a 2, but I feel 1 is kind of okay, to be fair. This is one of the ones that you can special out of your deck. So if you don't need to get any of your fusion cards and you're not going to summon out Cobra, because, you know, 9 out of 10, this card's in your hand anyway. It's just glued to it all the time. But then you bring this guy out, and this guy's then going to give you the ability to pretty much use it as a fusion on the board. And again, because it can use it as a fusion on the board, you're basically just increasing your amount of polys you have in the deck. So you've got the patchwork route, you've got the branded fusion route, you've then got instant fusion route, which is why like an Ash Blossom on a branded fusion is not the end of the world, and the deck can continue to keep going. So that's for the Predaplant monsters. For the branded or Despia monsters, we are playing 2 Aluba alongside 2 Albaz, the 1 Tragedy and the 1 Adlebiton, alongside the 1 Albion Dragon and the 1 Merry Carrier. Now, the only reason I'm playing these 2 is because I'm playing the Law version rather than the Pot of Prosperity version. But if you are to play the Pot of Prosperity version, you basically cut your deck down to a 40 card deck. I believe this is currently sitting at 41. And what you do is you end up taking out the Merry Carrier plus the Albion Dragon plus the 2 Allures, and you also take out Branded Opening because honestly they're not needed. Branded Loss is only in here because you're pretty much playing these cards here. The Allures are only in here because we're playing Merry Carrier and Tragedy as an alternative. Obviously you can banish these as well. You just don't get as much value from it. And obviously the Albion's only in here to get to this. And it's the same with the Branded Sword as well. So you've got like 6 flex spots. You can be like, I don't want to play this engine. I'd rather have Prosperity because I've got the money to play it. Or you're like, I can't afford the Prosperities. This is the engine you then play. Because apart from the Allures, all of this came in the structure deck. So you're good to rock and roll either way. And then the last of the monsters is like a bridge between the 2 is the Edge Imp package. So 2 chains, 1 poly and 1 patchwork. I consider bumping these up, and again, this is one of the ones that if you play Prosperity, you could bump the poly up to 2 and the patchwork up to 2. But in this version, because you have so many different poly spells and poly plays, so you've got your Camilla Sundew, that's one of them. You've got your Cobra that's going to search out one of them, whether it be your Instant Fusion, your Super Poly, anything like that. You've then got your Buffo, plus your poly, plus the 3 Branded Fusion. Like, you just have so many different options. It's absolutely crazy. So that's it for like the bridge parts and then the optional parts as well. And now I'm going to show you pretty much the branded spells and traps and all the other spells and traps. So of course in a branded deck you play triple branded fusion. Pretty straightforward on that one. Double branded opening and 1 branded in red. Now the reason I'm playing 2 opening and not 3 is because yes, opening is actually really good to help you trigger your chains and your backlists. But on the flip side of that as well, you're not playing as many Despia targets. You're only playing the 2 Aluba, which are only going to want to be summoning once, and that's one of the best ways of getting like Aluba plus a Scorpio, which is really, really cool. And then your Adlebiton, and you don't really want to be summoning out your Adlebiton unless you're going to use it as fusion material to then bounce back materials itself. We've then got an incredibly powerful Super Poly. Like, it's searchable in the deck. You can cut it if you are facing nothing but bad matchups for it. And in honesty, the tier matchup is really bad for this kind of card itself. So you'd then cut that out for something that is more specific. If you're going to your locals and you know that 50% plus are playing tiers, then you probably change it up a little bit. We've then, of course, got the 1 Instant Fusion alongside. There we go, 1 Instant Fusion. So this has 2 targets in the extra deck. 1 is insanely powerful, and then one of them, well, is also insanely powerful, but not as synergized with the deck. And I'll explain them when we get there. 1 Foolish Burial. So this is, again, a bridge between the 2, because you can Foolish Burial a Stay Sailor, you can Foolish Burial a Backbliss, you can also Foolish Burial a Tragedy. So you've got extra routes to get into your Despia part or the Predaplant side. And the 1 Predaplant, I've actually added this back in. I regretted it in my last version what I didn't have it in. But you get to special on a Predaplant monster from your hand. Then you get to add a Predap card from your deck to the hand. Now that's just... The Predap card is insane because you get to add the traps and the spells and the everything. It's so good. So I'm really sorry. I apologise to you, Predaplant, for even cutting you in the first place. And then for the final spells, we've got 2... Forbidden Droplet, purely because this will also help you trigger off certain cards as well. So again, I believe your Backlist will trigger because it just needs to be sent by card effect. Not by card effect, sorry, it just needs to be sent to the graveyard. So being able to, like, Droplets, if you can get additional advantage off of Droplets, not only negating your opponent's stuff, but then, of course, also being able to trigger your own stuff to get more advantage is insane. Not to mention as well, you've got to be careful, like going first and second. This deck doesn't, like, insta-lose if you end up facing something like a D-Shifter or a Dimension Fuser, but it kind of sucks. So that's where Droplet kind of becomes ultimately dead. But it's still a very, very good card to kind of break the board going second with a deck like this. And like I said, you've got so many cards that are either one-offs in like, well, technically a two-of in Super Poly, but you've got like Instant Fusion, you've got Branded Fusion, Predator Practice, everything like that all kind of build up on themselves, that they're all power cards your opponent going to want to stop. So it gives you the option of best of both. And the last two cards, I've got the one Banishment and the one Planning. Arguably, you could probably cut the Banishment, to be honest. The Banishment is only really in here as just a nice way of using your opponent's board and then reviving some of your own cards, and just as another form of searchable interruption. Predator Planning is actually insanely good. I love this card. So you send Predaplant monsters from your deck to the graveyard, place one Predap counter on each face-up monster on the field, and if you do, any monster that has a Predap counter on it, as long as it is a level 1 or lower, is pretty much, I believe it's negated. Oh no, it's negated with the fusion spell, sorry. And if you do, any of those monsters that are level 2 or higher become level 1, as long as they have the Predap counter. If you fusion summon a Dark Fusion monster while this card is in your graveyard, except during the damage step, you can banish this card from the graveyard to target a card on the field and destroy it, which is actually really important because a lot of people forget that. But why this is so good is, while a card has a Predap counter on it, and if you control Dracus Depelio, it becomes a skill drain. So Dracus Depelio is like one of your first go-to Predaplant monsters, and you just skill drain your opponent's entire board. Like, you flip this, you send one, you put counters on it, you then search off of the send because you'll be sending Backbliss to search out Scorpio, and you pretty much go, cool, negated, 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 and then anything new that they add on top is when Dracus Depelio comes in and goes, cool, I'm going to give you a token as well. And again, if you want to make this Predaplant token generator turbo, that's when you start introducing stuff like the Greedy Starving Venom and everything else like that. So that's it for the main deck. Moving on to the extra deck. So with the extra deck, again, I've kind of gone with some not questionable choices, but just choices that I feel are a little bit different from the norm. So I've gone with the triple-headed Predaplant. This is just insane. Like, it's an insane boss monster. It then gains attack equal to the original attack of a monster that has a Predap counter on it, so become a boss. It can revive itself from the graveyard. It can negate summons. It's everything you need it to be. I've got the one Dracus Depelio. Now, arguably, I probably want this at 2, to be fair. This is one of the first things that I'm considering more and more and more. But the reason I went with 1 is because it's like, once you get it on the board, unless your opponent has the best board-breaking card in their entire hand, they're not really able to do anything. So it is very hit and miss as whether you want to or not. If you don't want to, like, we play a lot of the branded. So, like, where the branded doesn't dominate the main deck, it does actually dominate the extra deck, sadly. But the cards are just so good. And then we got the one of the Predaplant level 5. This card's nuts. I love this card so much. So whether you're hard fusing it because it just requires 2 Predaplant monsters, but if it's fusion summons, you get to add a Predaplant monster or a Predap spell or trap from your deck graveyard, or face up from your extra deck to the hand. So again, nice recyclability there. You get to target one monster your opponent controls with a Predap counter or a monster you control. You tribute it as effect, and if you do, special summon a Predaplant monster from your deck. So what I mean by that is it can be a bit of a two-edged sword, because if this gets impermed, you can tribute it as cost, like chain it, tribute it as cost. Or vice versa, sorry. If it tributes as cost, then you're kind of good. It's not a quick effect to tribute, ignore that bit. But the idea is that because it doesn't tribute as cost, it can't really play around a lot of things. So, for example, if my opponent had a set imperm, is what I was trying to get to, and you activate the effect of this, if it tributed as cost, he would dodge and run off the board, and they couldn't imperm it. But because it doesn't tribute as cost, if I activate it and then my opponent changes imperm, he becomes negated, and it's like, still a 2500 defender, though. That can help. Just a generic Super Poly target, so this can very easily become your second Dracus Depelio. It's up to you. And then for the branded matchups, or the branded extra deck, we've got 1 Lubellion, 2 Mirror J, 2 Albions, 1 Albalanatus. The Albalanatus, again, can be cut to change it up if you want to. It's entirely up to you. 2 Masquerades, 1 Queen Sirius, 1 Chimera, and then the 1 Millennium Wise Restrict. Millennium Wise is your other target, as well as your level 5 Predaplant off of Instant Fusion. And it's one of these ones where if you can already get to this, or you already have all the bits you need, you can activate Instant Fusion on your Millennium Wise Restrict. And then during the end phase, if you've activated Branded Opening, you can actually banish the Branded Opening to protect this. But keep in mind, I believe, if my understanding was correct, the Instant Fusion checks every end phase. So it would check again during your opponent's end phase. And I believe you are then forced to try and protect again, and if you can't, it gets destroyed. But the idea is that having this on defense just means that your opponent has to think twice. It protects your Branded Fusion from Ash Blossom, which is beautiful. And then everything else keeps going from there. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is it. I really like this deck. It's been a while since I've kind of been able to dust it off and play it properly. I feel that the branded themselves are a little bit more dominant, and definitely when we get more of the new cards, the branded cards will be a lot better. but I still feel that this version with Predaplants in it are still really, really cool, very, very fun. And it kind of it gives the Predaplants a nice little power buff, which I feel that it needs and it definitely deserves, because I really enjoy Predaplants. I just feel that they needed a bit more love and attention, which they gladly got with this deck. And then hopefully they can get a little bit more as well. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope it's given you a couple of ideas for a build of your own. If you have any questions at all, please put them in the comments down below. I will be more than happy to answer them for you. But for now, as absolutely always, guys, stay safe and, of course, happy dueling.